Hey, welcome to Studio Takes. I'm Dane Scott. Talent and money, they don't always go together, at least at first. So if you've got the chops to do voiceovers, but you don't have the bucks, the question is, how in the world do you ever get rolling? Well, don't worry, there is a way. I'll talk about it coming up.
3, 2, 1.
Studio Takes. Real help for the aspiring voiceover artist.
It's Dane Scott from thegigdoctor.com. If you're just starting out, you have no money, but you have some talent, there's really nothing holding you back. In fact, I'll make a claim here. If all of my current setup, everything I've got, were to suddenly disappear and I found myself with no gear and essentially no money, I'll say that I could get myself back on track and starting to make voiceover income again within days. Even if I had $30 or so, it would be enough to get a solid start if I did things right. And I'll lay that out for you step by step. And at the end, I'm going to tell you how you can get a free book that'll help you down that path. Please hit the bell to subscribe and like the channel so you know every time there's a new Studio Takes. And if today's session is helpful or if you have any questions, be sure to comment below. The basics of voiceovers are pretty universal and unchanging, really, for as long as they've existed. You need a mic that'll reproduce your voice well, some place to record, something to record onto or into, and potentially a way to edit your recording, and some way to get the recording to the client. Unless you're recording at somebody else's studio, of course, in which case all you need is a way to get to their studio, and that's it. Now, when I got started doing my earliest freelancing, I was working at a radio station, so that was pretty convenient because I could just pop into the production room in my spare time. They would let you do that, and I could record myself to a reel-to-reel and then head to the post office and mail it out. And in other cases, I was hired then to do the voiceover at someone's production studio, so then I just drove there and read the script. In both cases, there was really no cost involved other than just the transportation. Or in the case of, and here's an unusual, kind of a funny notion, somebody wanted it and they were in a distant town, but they wanted it same day. I'd have to put it on a Greyhound bus and send it to them that way. But, despite the fact that I had these ways of doing voiceovers, what I really had inside of me was a desire to do my own production. I loved the idea of a home studio and getting booked to voice and produce commercials using my own equipment in my own room. But I didn't really have the ready cash for things like that back then, so it was a process of years, really, while I worked my way up to the point where I could afford an expensive piece of equipment like a reel-to-reel deck, a mixing board, and a professional microphone, and all that cost real money back then, believe me. Production gear was not cheap. In the decades that have followed, I've continued to build things up, improve my situation, my gear, to the point where now I'm pretty well situated here with some sophisticated equipment, a beautiful Neumann mic, and my long-dreamed-for wraparound console, which reminds me of my radio days. I've even hung on to some of my old analog gear from the 80s and keep that right near me just for nostalgia. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of what I have and use now, as much as I love having it around me and using it, wouldn't really be necessary nowadays. It's just not like it was when I started out doing voice acting over 40 years ago. The need for all the heavy-duty fancy gear is just gone. It's history. 3 of the 4 basic things that it takes to do voiceovers, a place to record, something to record onto, and the delivery method are things that most people already have at hand. So the 4th thing, a good starter quality microphone, they're so comparatively inexpensive now that they may as well be free. I'm going to tell you what I would do step by step if I had $0 and 0 gear coming up. And at the end today, I'm going to tell you how to get my book, 12 Pro Tips to Help You Grow as a Voice Actor at no charge, which will also help the cause. These vids take some time and effort on my part, so if you do like what I'm sharing, please hit the thumbs up and hit the bell to subscribe and drop me a comment below. Okay, so if someone snapped their fingers and suddenly all my gear was just gone, what would I do? Here's exactly how I would handle the situation. Number 1, I'd mourn for my gear. It took a long time to build that up, so I'd have to get the tears on my pillow out of the way. But then after that, I'd head over to Amazon and I'd order this microphone. It's called the Fifine K670. which is a little over $30 right now, and it comes with its own desk stand. The Fifine is an amazing little mic. It's a condenser mic, and it's USB-based, which immediately sends some of the purists into a frenzy, but I have personal proof of how good it is and how useful it is. Let me tell you 4 ways. Number 1, I heard about it from Bill DeWeese, who I respect a lot, and he and I did an interview where we talked about it. Second, I bought one myself out of curiosity, and I tried it out, and I liked it. Third, I did a side-by-side test with my Neumann, and I put the 2 recordings unlabeled up on Facebook, so they wouldn't know which was which. I just said recording number 1, recording number 2. And I asked people to tell me which one they liked better. And, most people were able to identify that which one was the Neumann and which was the Fifine, and they thought the Neumann sounded a little better. Though one person commented that they thought that the Fifine actually sounded better. All right, so that's number 3. Number 4, I found myself backed into a corner a little over a year ago when my main Neumann microphone developed a problem, and I had to turn to the Fifine while the Neumann was in the shop, which was a 6-week period of time. And during that 6 weeks, I earned over $15,000 on the Fifine, and I heard not one complaint from any of my clients. It's pretty impressive, considering the Neumann costs about 100 times as much as the Fifine. So yeah, step 1 for me, order the Fifine. I'd probably try and find enough extra scratch to buy one that comes with a scissor boom type mic arm. I think such packages exist there, and that just makes life so much easier. But, if I didn't have the cash for that, I'd just rig up something of my own to hold the mic, which one way or another has to be close enough to your face so you don't have to lean in an awkward position in order to get positioned the right distance and angle from the microphone. Again, that's a lot easier with a scissor boom, but if I didn't have that, I'd just rig something else up to make the same thing happen. And would I order a pop filter to go with it? No, don't need one. A pop filter is for people who don't know how to position a mic to avoid puffing into the microphone. If you position the mic correctly, you can totally do without the pop filter. All right, so Amazon delivery takes 2 or 3 days? And that gives me 2 or 3 days then to get everything else ready. And everything else in this case is mainly figuring out where I'll record, getting that set up. I'll tell you what I would do if I had no place already designated. I'd walk through my house, snapping my fingers and clapping my hands and yelling, "Hey!" or, some loud sound, some loud voice, single syllable word. And, of course, I'd make sure that no one else was in the house when I'm doing that so that they didn't freak out. But, yeah, that's what I'd do. I'd clap, snap, and yell. Basically taking kind of an audio survey of the house to see where is the echo the least. A worst-case scenario would be a room with no furniture. Have you ever been in a room where, everything's been removed so that you can paint, and it has this terrible ring in it? Okay, that would be a worst-case scenario, and the opposite of that would be as little ring or echo as possible. So let's say that I've gone through the house, the main floors, I've looked through the basement, I've tried all the rooms in the house, and I've concluded that there's one back bedroom that has the least problem, and it's rectangular, not square, which is good because a perfect square is harder to reduce echo in. Next thing I would do is to survey the room for changes that I can make using whatever comes to hand, basically scavenger hunt time. So do I have bookshelves I can put up? Is there some soft furniture I can move into the room? Are there things I can pile up in the corners of the room where the walls come together, like pillows and stuffed animals and rolled up blankets? What I'd be looking for is basically clutter, things that complicate all the surfaces so the sound can't zing around. If there were framed pictures on the walls with glass, I'd replace them with fabric hangings if I have any. If there are horizontal surfaces anywhere in the room, a desk, top of a chest of drawers, empty shelves, anything like that, I would just put objects randomly, on those surfaces. The more the merrier. If there's a closet, I would leave the doors of the closet open. If there was a chest of drawers, I would open all the drawers to various degrees. What you'll discover is that you can make some really rapid progress in improving a room as you clutter it up. And with a little creativity, you can do it all without it turning into just a big mess. You can actually make it kind of cozy. Now, for the people who have been indoctrinated on the idea that you have to have a booth to do voiceovers, you might be recoiling in horror at what I've described so far. In my Voiceover Mythbusters book, I talk about this in great detail. But my short answer to that is you only need a booth if you need a booth. I think most people would much rather work in a nice open room than in an area that's no bigger than a large phone booth. Ultimately, maybe you and, well, in my imaginary situation, even I might conclude that a booth will serve us better. But I'm not starting with that assumption. I'm going to see if I can make a room work for me, at least initially. That said, if I just can't get a room tamed down enough, soon enough, initially, I'll just move into a closed closet or do my voiceovers in the car or the van for a while. But one way or another, I'll find a solution, and very quickly, that's going to meet at least my temporary needs for recording, a recording space of some kind. Remember that the focus is on something that works, not something that's fancy at this stage. And what works can, I repeat, can be a room rather than a booth if you complicate the surfaces in it enough. Will it be a dead clean room with no echo? Probably not. But again, and some are going to cringe at this, but I say it doesn't have to be. I think a certain amount of liveness in a recording sounds more natural than a room that's so heavily treated like a little booth or whatever that every sound is like a dead thud. So will I probably use a room at least at first? Yes, if I possibly can. And how long have we taken so far? I'm not building acoustic panels or anything like that, just stocking the room with things that eliminate echo, so let's say 1 day max. Next, I need a recording surface, a desk or a table, basically. Something that can hold a mic stand, or if I get one of those scissor boom type stands, something that has an edge on it that I can clamp onto. It needs to have adequate space for a computer monitor or a laptop. If I'm using a computer that has a cooling fan, 2 things. First, I'm going to go into the software of the computer, the operating system, and see what all kind of stuff is running in the background. A lot of times there are all these little programs they call TSRs, or Terminate and Stay Ready, that are sitting there like with their engines idling, using up processing all the time. They waste electricity, they heat up the computer. So if you can find out what all the little background tasks are on your computer and kill a lot of those so they don't happen when you boot up the computer, you'll have a cooler running machine and less likely that it's going to be making loud fan noises. The other thing I'll probably do until I have something a little more permanent is to just set up some kind of a barrier so that the computer is on the back side of something that keeps it from being quite as loud in the room. But odds are, with a lot of computers today, the fan noise is not too much of a problem. Or if you have what I have here, which is a Mac M2, doesn't have a fan at all, so there is no noise at all. And then a couple other things, I would lay a thick blanket or a bath towel or something over the surface of the table or desk to eliminate echo off of that surface. I'd find a chair that's going to let me sit the proper distance from the microphone once that mic arrives. And the other thing I'll do, if it's possible, is to center the desk from side to side and front to back. So basically, the dead center of the room is going to be the least bad place for echo. So, getting everything set up in the way of a desk, certainly less than a day. And I'm going to need some software too. In my start from scratch scenario here, I'm assuming nothing. So I'm going to download Audacity. It's free, it's very capable, and there are actual whole user groups of VoiceOver people using it, and a ton of YouTube info on how to record in it, edit in it, and everything. So I'll totally go with Audacity. It'll serve my purpose just great and cost me nothing. Okay, so a couple days have gone by now, and I've got everything pretty much set up here. And then there's a ring at the door, ding dong, and the delivery guy is there with a box. So I quickly unpack, and I bring into my new little recording room the USB mic, this Fifine mic. And because USB mics are so simple, just a USB cable that plugs into the computer, I'll have that screwed onto the stand or the scissor boom arm and plugged in 5 minutes. I'll do some test recording into Audacity to set the levels and make sure that I'm in that Goldilocks area where it's not ridiculously low level and I'm not so hot that I'm distorting. Ideally, I'll do my adjustments right on the mic itself using the gain knob there so that I'm feeding a solid signal into the computer rather than the other approach, which would be using the gain adjustment in Audacity to compensate for too low of a level coming from the signal being sent by the mic. So that way it'll be cleaner. Send more signal from the mic and then adjust down accordingly in Audacity or whatever you're recording in. Well, guess what, guys? It's only been a couple days and I'm ready. While the acoustics might not be as nice as my real setup and the mic isn't going to be quite as lovely sounding as the Neumann, I have everything I need to start fulfilling orders from my Fiverr clients and making people happy. Odds are I won't hear from a single person who complains about the quality of what I send them. Total cost, 30-some bucks. What would I do next? Well, I'd work my way back up. The very next step, after I make some initial money, believe it or not, won't be to get a better mic. It will be to continuously improve the room, making it as acoustically great as I can. I'll use those initial voiceover funds to build myself some of those acoustic panels that I'm showing you here. A whole room full of them won't cost more than about $100, and the technical quality of what they give me, with their mineral wool insulation inside and the thin fabric on the outside that lets the sound pass in and get trapped, is every bit as good as the really expensive stuff you can find out there. And I'll go around the room looking for more ways to make it sound better and better. In a very extreme situation, if I absolutely can't improve the room to my satisfaction, I could still look at building a booth or revamping a walk-in closet or something, but that's a last-ditch situation for me because I like the elbow room. Now, you might be saying, right, Dane, but you're talking theory here. It's easy to say this stuff, but if the rubber ever met the road and you had to start from scratch, could you really do what you've described? Yes, without any doubt whatsoever. How do I know? Because I've done it with even less. If I needed to, I would throw a quilt over my head and I'd do the voiceovers that way and work my way back up. It's not about the money or the gear, despite all the stuff you see and hear. It's certainly not about plugins and filters and processing. It's about the work that you do, the quality of what you can offer. If you're capable of doing voiceovers that make clients happy, all the rest of it is just window dressing. I have a course that picks up right where this leaves off. It's called Voiceovers, the fastest, least expensive way to get started. And it's available over at Udemy right now for practically nothing. What I recommend is that you head over there and do that course because it really does fill in the blanks for you. And it'll help to reassure you, too, that you can totally do this. At the end of the course, I'll give you a free copy of my book, 12 Pro Tips to Help You Grow as a Voice Actor. The link to the course is in the show notes here. At the end of the course, you can request the book, and I hope you'll also give me a review over there. It's all about helping you every way I can. All right, if you haven't subscribed yet, take a sec to do that before you head off so I can come your way with another one of these soon. See ya.